here to learn more about investing opportunities or where to raise funds, what type of funds to raise, how many of you, how many of you are in early stages of ideation versus you already have a product that you want to take to the market?
Can I ask a question?
Yes.
Do you have any questions that you want investors to give you? Do you have any questions you want to raise? Anything?
What are areas that you
would?
would?
What have you come here to hear from us?
Yeah.
How to reach the investors and raise funding.
Okay.
We have the product, we have got a go-to-market strategy.
Yeah. So you want to hear about how to raise funding?
Yes.
Is there a question?
Yeah, that would be because most of the investors since morning I met, they said we need a reference. We say a lot of no and very few yes.
Yes. Okay.
Okay.
So they are saying funding is the in his career he has funded only 25 companies. So the number of no's are unbelievably high. So that was not very motivative for any entrepreneur.
Okay.
So because one side they said that you need
good sales pitch. You pitch to me.
Yeah. So the one side they preach about saying that young entrepreneurs come out, do products, we will fund. The other side they're saying no. So where does this yes start?
Okay. Is there a second question?
Yeah.
There are many questions I have because we have met almost 500 investors in US. Our product is more in US, and the kind of they never talk about what the idea is. They look at do you have revenue? Did you have exit? Did you do this?
Okay. There are many other people.
All right. You had. Yeah.
So what is the framework that you follow to say yes or no? And do you sometimes think that the product is quite early to the market or it's not for the right market? And what are some of the metrics that you look at?
Are you serving the Bharat?
So I work for a large corporation enterprise, so I'm planning to build a product for the Bharat.
Okay. All right. I had one more question around what. So we have seen multiple definitions of what Bharat is. I would simply put that in 3 customer segments, just for us to understand what customer segment do you work for. There is the large, rich Bharat, which is tier 3, tier 4 towns, villages, people who have the paying capacity of an urban area, but have not been accessed because of their remoteness. There is a middle class in between where they have which is the middle class from tier 2, tier 3 towns, smaller areas, and then there's the poor and extremely poor. They could be in urban, rural settings as well, right? So how many of you here are targeting the customer segment 1? Okay. How many of you here are targeting the middle segment of users? Okay. And how many of you here are targeting the bottommost layer that I talked about? Okay, perfect. All right. Okay. Any more questions? I think somebody else had raised.
I think I have raised the hand. It's just how to take the money inside. Like, is it in a debenture note or in a CCPS notes, convertory notes, promissory notes,
Okay.
something like that?
Okay. All right. So I'm just gonna quickly grab my phone. Do you want to start answering the question that one of these guys had?
Which one?
I think we'll just talk about what motivates us, what excites us about entrepreneurs. Maybe, yeah. You want to go first?
Sure. So, I mean, as a fund, we are clearly focused on innovations and we're looking for disruptions, technology disruptions for the next billion, right? And, we are sector agnostic, though being in this segment then puts us into certain sectors more so than others. And that's fine, but I think opportunities are there across all sorts of sectors. We do invest early, so we come in early, but typically the kind of capital that we sit in doesn't let us, do an idea, right? So there are other people in the ecosystem that sort of take a look at that. And, we are investing like any other VC in terms of, investing early and looking for scale but looking for scale in this market here is what we are sort of interested in. So when we look at an entrepreneur or an idea that comes in to our door, I mean, we kind of evaluate it across these parameters. Because we are a venture capital firm, we are investing for growth, scale, you know, the idea has to be scalable, or the company has to be scalable. We what the solution is, what the business model is things that we spend time on. We need to understand how this will actually work in the market. Why do we believe that there will be scale here? And of course there is the team, right? I mean, and how large a business you can build here, right? So those are all parameters which I think are fairly standard parameters. I think what happens is that when you start looking at sectors, etc., you as a investor develop theses as a result of either your experiences or uh, you know what's happening on the market and on the ground, right? And I think most investors are open to being challenged on their thesis, and if they're not, then somewhere you're not quite, you're going to miss out on the opportunities, right? But we often get things which are just don't fit our mandate, right? I mean, if you're not solving for this market, it doesn't fit our mandate. If you're a much larger company and you're trying to put together a lot of capital and you say, yeah, please give me a little bit, 5 rupees, it'll add up to, it's a drop. That doesn't work for us. So, there are some parameters that are not really things we can compromise on, right? But on a whole, I think, most investors, it may not feel that way, but I think they're looking to do that. I think they may need to be more of an education. You have to excite them to understand if they don't understand. Typically, if it's in their thesis, they understand the market. Saying yes or no is much simpler. If it's not, then I think you have to work harder as an entrepreneur to figure out why that person will invest the time into understanding that market. And I think that somewhere that role does lie with the entrepreneur on doing it. And I can give you examples of things that we never said we would ever look at, and sort of the internal discussions around it, but we did, and we ended up going ahead and doing it. So I think that's definitely possible.
Yeah, sure. Wonderfully well put. So, to who do investors really owe their existence? It's you, the entrepreneurs. If you weren't there, investors wouldn't be there. Yeah. But just to add to what Ritu said, beauty is in the eye of the beholder. If there is no beholder, either the thing of beauty is being shown to the wrong person, or you're not putting your case forward correctly. Yeah, so you need to be able to tell the story. Somebody here talked about they've spoken to so many investors and nobody's saying yes. Look, just like you're looking to raise money, we are under pressure to deploy money. You need to understand that. We are completely under pressure to deploy money because this is not my personal money. This is the money of investors who put money into my trust. Now, this trust has a time frame. It has to invest money. Otherwise, I will never get a credibility in the market as a fund manager. Okay, so now, in terms of the solutions for Bharat, the key subject, I think the way you look at as an investor, and I'm sure that Ritu will agree with me, is that the way you look at a investment is, will this survive the test of time? Number one, would the founder stay committed? And will it give me an exit that I have promised to my investors? You understand? Now, in that, I can't just put the money and forget about it. I have to make sure that I have invested money in founders who are mentorable, who have jigyasa. I don't know if you understand who have the power to learn more. And we as investors have either been entrepreneurs in the past or have seen enough to be able to guide you. If nothing, to help you with our Rolodexes and say, wait a minute, let me give you somebody you can talk to who will help you on this one. So not only are we keen to invest the money, but we are very, very keen to make sure that you are successful. And the 5 things that I kind of look at: number one, who's the team? How committed they are, how well matched they are, how messy they are, mutually exclusive, collectively expansive, so on and so forth. Second is, how big is the market? So, and if you're addressing Bharat, I mean, it's a huge market. There's no question about it. Whether it's the tier 1 that she talked about, sorry, not the tier 1, the category 1, the 2, the 3, they're all huge. So the market is very, very big. But how well have you studied the market? How well have you studied the competition to your market? Third is, how good is your offering, the product? Yeah. Fourth, to me, is there an exit for me as an investor? You as a founder may decide never to exit, but I as an investor would like to see an exit. And fourth is, what are the terms of investment? I mean, if you're going to tell me I'm an early stage company, I'm seeking 2 crores and I'm valuing my company at 100 crores, those terms don't work out. So these are the 5 things that I look at. You want to add to that? Or?
No, I think you, Amitabh, covered that pretty well, right? So I think these are all factors. So there is and as an entrepreneur, I think it's important that you, I mean, and I think Amitabh, your point about the fact that every person who manages a fund is managing somebody else's money, so is an important one, right? So you need to understand the investor's business, right? And I'm not saying at the detail level, but you need to understand the fact that somebody is looking to evaluate you, to give you money, to reach a point at which they need the money back to give back to somebody else, and that's an important part of the analysis, right? And so a lot of people come and say, and there are lots and lots of businesses, and I'll be the first to say that I actually don't think we actually have all the capital instruments in India that allow you to invest in different types of businesses here, right? There are straight up equity or there is debt here. So, there are lots of companies that can probably pay dividends forever, etc. But we're not set up to be able to deal with those kind of things, right? We do need that exit at the end. This is not a lifetime, it's a finite time kind of fund where return is important. So I think it's important that you understand. I think, Amitabh, you covered that.
Does anybody want to challenge or question us on this? Yeah, please.
I have a question. So, since you said exit is important, okay, obviously for you, right?
No, but the people are recording. So.
Okay, yeah. So, since exit is important, and obviously in urban India, it's not easy, but it's easier for monetization and getting people to pay for things. But we're looking at Bharat, making money is not that easy. Is what is in the mindset, at least for people, for entrepreneurs, thinking, oh, it's a really really poor economy, they'll not pay. So how do investors look at exit in those kind of companies when you're saying maybe money may not come in the near future? And how do you look at exit there?
So I disagree with that premise, right? Okay, then it's not a market, right? At the end of the day, so I do think there is a segment of the population that is probably pretty destitute, and as a consumer, is not something that that makes any sense, right? So and there are, and Priya looks at a lot of stuff that you will address through a not-for-profit is sort of doing that. So there are different ways that you address Bharat, right? It's an extremely large market. It may be fragmented. There may be small margins to be made. So you need to get to scale faster. There are people who interact with this market. So we do a lot of agri investing, right? Have you eaten today? Okay, that came from Bharat somewhere, yeah, at some time, okay? All of us have eaten here. So at the end of the day, it's a massive market. We all participate in that market. Bharat is the producer for your food at the end of the day. There are lots of people in that chain who are completely investable, can completely engage and make the changes to Bharat, right? That can be businesses, right? So I think to just look at Bharat as a consumer is one piece of it, but to look at Bharat as a producer and what you can do for that is also a different piece. And if you think that there is no money to be made and the person is too poor or whatever intermediary is too poor, then it's not a business, right? Then I think you need to look at it with a different lens. So mixing the two doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, it's a great point. So there are different models of innovation when you look at Bharat. There are some segments which are profitable for a business to go in, bring in efficiencies, bring in access. But there are certain consumer segments which won't be profitable for the next 10 years. Unfortunately, a lot of them have been left behind, where because the government doesn't have efficiencies to go deal with those customer segments, or the business, they're not profitable or good enough for in terms of profit for the businesses to reach out to, which is where the non-profit model exists. The way I look at non-profit model is that it is still a business, just that you have a proxy customer in terms of a donor who pays for the services that somebody else consumes. And if you look at it this way, then What you're doing is exactly the same that a for-profit business is doing. You're doing business development where you're going out to a proxy customer to raise funds for somebody who will consume your services or product. And to say that the Bharat does not pay, that Bharat also pays if they see a value in that product that you're delivering. They may not pay at the same level that the urban Bharat is willing to pay, but they will be able to pay a smaller amount, which is where then you use your proxy customer, then you bring in your frugal innovations to somehow come up with a product which matches the price point that they are willing to pay for.
I just want to add to this. You talked about some of the companies that will take, say, 10 years to make profit or to make revenues. I can't name companies which are outside of my portfolio, but we are all aware of a large co-living, co-working company which has consumed a lot of money, but hopefully they're building value. I can talk about Facebook because all of us use Facebook. It didn't make money for a lot of time, and nobody thought that Zuckerberg wasn't even worried about making money, forget about profits. Okay, but they created something of value, right? The point is, if you create something of value, if you create honey, so the other way
bees
around.
will
If you build the flowers, the bees will come. Sorry, that's what I meant to say. Okay, so it's all about creating value. Yeah, I feel, I mean, Priya and I were having this discussion earlier that, if we can fund some of these guys who are not going to make money for 10, 12, 15 years and ultimately go straight to the market to list themselves, I'm sure that there is a business model that you can build around women for whom we want to predict that they will have a preterm birth, for example. I'm sure that you can put together a story which is large enough where you don't end up charging so much money to the poor people, but you have data which you are then able to use and monetize in some ways. So there is a way in which you can build a model. The question is, are there Zuckerbergs for what I call as the impact unicorns? If you're going to create an impact unicorn, they will be, if you are the Zuckerberg who's going to create an impact unicorn, yeah, sure, I'll be there.
I don't know if you were there in the morning session that Uma took. She was principal secretary with Panchayat Raj with government of Karnataka. And a few things she talked about is they have certain problem statements that they want to solve for. They are looking for innovative, frugal innovation for those problems. So government in this case is a large customer, where the user on the ground will not pay for it, but the government is willing to pay for it if there are innovations which are relevant for the government.
There could be an insurance company who might pay for it.
Absolutely.
So I just want to give you an example, right? Down underneath my house, I can go to a clinic and see a GP for 100 rupees. We are invested in a rural healthcare tech company, basically. And just take a guess as what the average amount of money that they pay to go see a quack. It's not 100, it's more than that, right? So I think that, we somewhere have these images of, extreme poverty, they can't pay. I think people don't earn much money, so they are much tougher customers. So they will evaluate what's on offer much, much harder because they don't have the spare cash to sort of burn, right? But I don't think it's necessarily true that they pay less, right? If they see the value, as Priya said, I think they're willing to pay a lot, is what that is.
You are running some kind of a Bharat venture. You want to talk quickly, just 30 seconds. 30-second pitch, come on.
We are actually developing a farm to fork kind of agri-tech. We are delivering milk now.
Okay.
And we are targeting the lower end of the customers. And we are delivering 100 ml to 200 ml milks. And we are profitable. We are in small scale.
For us?
Yeah, a lot of questions. But
Anyone that everybody else
how
can
much do
benefit
you value about the team members? The team, about the idea or models?
So we are early stage investors. I cannot emphasize enough that the team is super important, right? The business may change, you may pivot, you may whatever, but if you don't have the right team that can then kind of, sort out what has to be done. This is not like, $100 million coming into a well-established company that, you're looking at something very different over there. At an early stage, team is all critical.
Yeah, that's what I have worked with several companies. I was following a lot of companies. I can't find the talent in the tier 3 cities and all.
So So when I look at when I look at entrepreneurs, one of the first thing that I check is who are the people support system around them. And support spiral is one of the biggest thing that I feel that an entrepreneur brings on. If you don't have committed people who are behind you, if you don't have people who believe in your conviction, it is very difficult for you to succeed.
So for
And
any
that is the
enterprise, the people from whom you raise money, the people from to whom you sell your services, and the people that you attract into your team, you need to be good at all the three.
all three. Yeah.
No, we are people are very much attracted towards our country, but
Awesome.
their level of
Can I give you my business card?
sure.
Good people.
Yeah.
Right.
I can't find the good people.
You left out the word good, road. So not everybody, but the people who are valuable for
Okay.
you,
For you.
right?
Yeah.
Is what you meant.
Thank you.
Priya?
Hi, my name is Sachin.
Yeah.
I have a quick question. I'm here.
Yeah.
Since we're talking about Bharat and most of the problems are regulatory, what is your experience so far? For example, Ankur has been working in agriculture sector. We have been in agriculture sector from past 1 year, and we have been collaborating with different partners as well. And when you say exit as well, that's something bit worrying for me because it is also regulated markets, like for example healthcare, which you mentioned, or agriculture you mentioned. So how is your experience is my question.
So I think there are parts of the market that are regulated, right? And I think those are difficult, right? Essentially. So if you're going to talk about, the public distribution system, or, procuring paddy and at MSP, I mean, those are different. They're not even market. There's a government intervention that's kind of happening on the regulation there. If you're talking about urea sales, right? I mean, those are very different, right? But I think there is a large part of the market which is actually a market, right? Which is a non-subsidized market. I mean, we crossed horticulture production, beat staples production 2 years back or something, which is completely unregulated in many different ways. Yeah, right. So I think there is a segment of the market which I think is not investable, right? And that's the purview of the government. And it's important, at least in an agricultural market or a health market, that the government has to play a role in those things. And I think those, will work out as to how that works. But I think there's a large swath that is beyond that piece.
So not directly answering the question that you have asked for, I think in terms of one is of course the regulatory issue which you can lobby. I mean, I grew up in the 80s when NASSCOM had to do stuff to get the government, you know, to lobby enough to get the government to do something. Yeah, so that's one thing. I think the other question is, are you trying to raise the money from the right resource? If something is investable best by the government and you go to fund, it just doesn't make sense. So if you go to BIRAC, if you go to DST, you go to DSIR, there are so many funding agencies of the government of India. If you go to MNRE, for example, the renewable energy, so there are monies available. You talked about raising money in debt or in equity. The question is, what is the kind of business that you are running? If it needs working capital, then there is no need for an equity. You are best to take a loan from a financial institution and then run the company. You can take it on an LC basis, letter of credit, or you offer some mortgage to get the loan. So it's really, the investors, the smart investors are here to make sure that you get a fair deal. This is like a marriage, okay? This is not for like a date or something. So we're going to be in it together for a long time. I have to make sure that you're going to be happy. I have to make sure that you are rich, because unless you become rich, I will not, as an investor. Yes, sir.
Yeah, taking next 5 year or 10 years horizon, what are the sectors most promising for Bharat? Is it education, healthcare, agri is one sector?
Everything.
Everything.
All the schemes organized declared by the government of India. Just chase any of those.
So I think we sit at an unprecedented time, and I like to say that we've built our digital highways much better than we ever built our physical highways. The physical ones still are in pretty bad shape, right? So that all of a sudden takes this very, very large, massive population, which, you guys have referred to, don't have much money, whatever, are spread out, hard to access, all of which is has been traditionally very expensive, which is why the products and services for this segment have been limited to whatever some local entrepreneurs end up doing, right? But thanks to these digital highways, all of a sudden, all of you have the potential to be creating something addressing this segment in a very, very different way of disrupting how these markets have traditionally worked. So, with a mobile phone in every person's hand, or every other person's hand, or every family, however you want to take a look at it, you are seeing the changes and you are seeing what these people are doing. So, now it's up to entrepreneurs to innovate on that and build those businesses. So, that's why I think today is a very interesting time to actually do this.
Yeah. Actually, when I see both in the for-profit, social enterprise, non-profit models, there are areas where you will see you can add a lot of value. 5 years back, if somebody asked me what is a tech non-profit, well, it didn't exist. But today, do I have to wait for 10, 20 years to get AI, to use AI to predict what women and child are undernourished? Do I have to wait for another 10 years to use IoT in public toilets to check whether the toilets are maintained well or not? No, I don't have to, because there's a lot of money flowing in where people are willing to take risk. There are also a lot of new ideas that are coming in. Technology is becoming cheaper. It's easier for you to go in a village and set up something in the village because the market access is much easier. So if I pick up agriculture, if I pick up education, if I pick up health, if I pick up sanitation or water, there are huge demand everywhere. Bharat is really, really big. Most of the needs are very urgent. Any of these areas that you pick up, there are lots of problem statement that the government is coming up with and saying, here are areas that we need help. And you pick up any of them, there is a market for it.
How many of you were there in the previous session? Sorry, 2 sessions prior to this where somebody talked about Boombox? Okay, so I invested in a company called Boombox. So we invested in a company called Boombox, and they were essentially looking at last mile delivery to Kasbahs. And a Kasbah is a place which is 500 to 5,000 people max. How do you deliver goods and services to a small town? It's a big challenge, and somebody gave the answer earlier on, so I don't know how many of you were there in the room. They figured out that a lot of these self-help groups, the banking correspondents, and what they call as the boombox champions, who are traveling from these 500 to 5,000 people town to a 50,000 or a 1 lakh town nearby to collect monies from bank to distribute as loan to people. Now, they're traveling back and forth anyways. If they are told to carry some goods like a pressure cooker or maybe a small mobile phone, or many of these places don't even have mobile. So there are different goods that are to be sold. The investors who put money into Flipkart or those kind of companies did not assume the model would be the same as what it was in the West for Amazon. They had to adopt it for India. Now, to do that for Bharat, you need to adopt what are the things that they're buying, what are the things that they're looking to invest in. You want to give any examples of your company?
Yeah, sure. I think actually, one thing I'm sort of big is that, in the ag space, for example, right, there is what I call the B2B to F kind of models that are here, right? And so, for example, and you have probably heard this company before called Cropin, right? You realize at the end of the day, as I was mentioning earlier, we all eat. We have a small farmer that produces the food at the other side, right? But there is a pain point from the farmer's perspective, there's a pain point from the processor's perspective, there's a pain point from a logistics perspective, there's a pain point which is being ironed out for us, or we are paying for it in some respects, of being able to actually optimize how this all happens. So, all of a sudden when you have a technology, earlier what you had to do is you had to go visit every farm, right? Which is a bit expensive. Whether the guy actually goes or sleeps under the tree is another issue. So end of it, this all added up to issues in the supply chain. But with the technology, all of a sudden, you can be sitting right here on your computer watching farm by farm what's kind of happening, right? So you're looking at a business model which is not saying that, hey, I as a small farmer I'm going to pay. But what you're looking at is you're looking at businesses that interact with producers and saying, how do I optimize that business for them so that's a win-win to everybody in this ecosystem. So I think, here are some things to think about. The other piece of it is, let me take a healthcare example, right? We are invested in this company called Niramai, and it's an interesting product company in which both hardware and software are coming together, right? So you have AI that is coming together to analyze the images, and you have a hardware which is looking at thermal images for breast cancer. Now, what does this do for Bharat? Right? At the end of the day, in India today, we do not have the skill sets to be running high-end imaging solutions in the last mile. Okay, but technology, AI, has come to the rescue of saying that that cognitive load that is needed for me to be a radiologist or to be a high flying whatever doctor, which we don't have today. And if the people who are already educated in that want to be in the urban cream market and said, I've invested so much in my life, I'm not going back over there. All of a sudden, you find that cognitive load is being picked up by technology. So somebody who is a much, much lower skilled person can actually execute this, and actually you don't need the person, but whatever, for at least a patient, whatever interaction, a little bit of service related things is what you do, right? So today, the adoption of this happening in rural India, in all of those in lower income things, is way higher. If I were to take a look at the segment of how much has been used by, it's equally applicable to any woman, doesn't matter, right? Indian, non-Indian, rich, poor, doesn't really matter. The number of people that are actually using this that are coming from much poorer segments is much higher, right? Because you've made the access possible. You've also reduced a whole bunch of costs in the technology solution here. So I think these are examples of things of how you see things are changing to address this market, and we'll see more of those, I'm pretty sure.
So I have an interesting example. So one of the startups that I work with has a small device that a child wears, which carries the data of their immunization records. Even today, in small villages in Rajasthan, even Karnataka, the immunization records are carried on paper by the last mile health workers or by the mothers. If by chance that immunization record is lost, you don't know what immunization has been given to the child. There are about 8 lakh deaths which can be prevented if you have that data digitized. It's as simple as that. But today, nobody is digitizing that. The health worker writes all the records on a piece of paper, gives it to the nearest town, where somebody gives it to the nearest district headquarters, where somebody goes and gives it to the back end office, where it is digitized. So by the time you're able to see this lady or a woman who is expecting and you know that she's malnourished, by the time the data goes online and somebody can look at that data, 6 months pass and she delivers a stillborn baby. And there are lots of actions that can be taken if the data is digitized at the last mile. Now, who pays for that? There is a lot of money that is required to experiment with that. There's a lot of money required to go down, understand what this woman requires, what type of design would be required, and which is where a lot of people like us come in. The role that I see for us, for example, in this is that we enable market access. When we enable problem understanding for people, they go in the market, they understand what people are going through. We provide experiment money for people to go in and say, okay, if this is the problem, here are solutions. Eventually, the exit for me, for example, is not money. The exit for me is that the government takes up your solution and then puts it out in the market completely. And it is the paying customer for that startup. So it's interesting to kind of start thinking about how can you use technology in a way that there is a paying customer at the end of it, but maybe not for the next 10 years.
How many of you are looking for technological solutions to the problems that you or your organizations that you are representing? Because many of you raised your hand when she said that how many of you are working for a company that's addressing the market. So how many of you are looking for technologies that you can use in or license to your business and then use? Are there any questions around that? Huh? So how many of you who are addressing the Bharat as a market are looking for technological solutions to aid your current business models or your proposed business model? Yeah. So for example, you could say that I'm looking to find out if there is a handheld device to find milk adulteration, for example. Yeah, you have the whole business model figured out, but you don't know where to get something like that, or how to test the soil, or how to create a nephrology machine in under 1 lakh, for example. So if you want to completely change the blood circulation in, what's the name of the machine which does, sorry, dialysis. So can I get a dialysis machine for 1 lakh which I can use it in my house? So are there questions around that for which you're seeking technology, or if you're seeking money, then where we can try and answer some of those questions?
Comment about a child wearing a small device to store immunization records. Today, mobile devices are serving so many different purposes. In fact, the other day I was watching a WhatsApp message where the doctor said the mobile device is now replacing even the stethoscope.
Yeah.
Right. So why do we need a special purpose device to be invented and manufactured? Which is such a wasted effort when there are mobile devices. A mom can be provided a mobile device which serves a lot of other purposes, right? So I think we should think twice before we invest in unnecessary hardware and waste our resources.
So I moved into this sector 1.5 years back, and frankly I didn't understand Bharat at all. But I had these amazing ideas on how to completely overhaul the education system and the health system, etc. And when I went into, so last 1.5 years, I've gone to a lot of primary care centers, a lot of government schools, a lot of Anganwadis. When we hear these reports of Geo is everywhere, everybody's connected. I went to a village recently about 30 kilometers from Udaipur, which is a large tourist hub. There is no internet, there is no phone signal.
Right, so shouldn't we fix that instead of, the cost of bringing out a new hardware device is humongous as compared to putting up a...
No, there is frugal innovation, which is where my frugal innovation comes in. This device uses NFC. It costs 30 rupees to create.
Right, but the fabricating machines, I mean the fab machines that are required to start the whole process.
No, I'm saying that the unit cost of this is 30 rupees, which can last for 5 years of a child's life.
Isn't that a wasted hardware if the mobile device is there to do a lot more things?
I think there is just different cycles.
Yes.
I think you're absolutely right that down the line this is going to be a mobile driven thing.
Maybe
where a single device is going to have much more functionality of sort of what it does. I think that you're right that we should be thinking about, I mean, we're thinking about the future here, right? And the past is not necessarily a predictor.
It is the present.
I completely agree with you. There may be some dark pockets that need to be addressed, right?
Smartphones today.
I think that there still is there's a necessity for devices still. Okay, and I'll go back to my example that I gave earlier, right? And there are things that are now getting appended to a smartphone, right? That are smaller devices that can allow the smartphone to be the data collector. So you can take an example of, when your phone can take a picture, right? But it takes a picture in the visual range, right? There are a bunch of kind of things that happen outside that, which technically doesn't form a solution for the average consumer. So your average, whatever, Genie phone or whatever, doesn't have that camera in it. So I think there are certain needs for certain devices to expand the functionality of the phone. But I think ultimately the phone is going to be that ubiquitous device that's going to kind of work.
So I just not wanting to change. We have amongst us a very special person whose son has created a device which can tell Google what, if you ask me a question, the signals from the mind are translated in that device and the same gets searched. Rajnish, you want to talk about that? Quick 30 seconds. Come on, just quickly, 30 seconds.
You put me on a spot.
No. So
I think
it's
it was,
really an excellent invention. Just imagine what's going to happen to all the translator machines once this happens.
Yeah, so I think he's using the idea is really to allow us as human beings to have extended abilities and provide that AI, of course, very personal AI experience.
which means, whatever you are sort of thinking and volitionally thinking, it is the, privacy guys, don't worry about it. It is volitional because you have to really articulate it. But if you go back to your school days or your college days when you would try to learn something, remember you were talking to yourself in your head. You could almost, you were moving your tongue inside. And that's what this device catches. It's basically picking up signals from your peripheral nervous system over here, and and doing an AI, signal, processing on it. Then it's connected via a brain-computer interface through a smartphone. To your point, it's actually using the smartphone, doing some edge computing on it, going back to the internet, getting the answer, and that answer is coming back through bone conduction straight into your skull. So you're not blocking the ears of the user, because that ambient environment, access to the ambient environment is not impaired. So essentially,
just imagine the number of today devices that will just get obliterated as a result of this technology. Of course, it's a development stage.
Yeah,
but
it's a different kind of interface, right? Completely. It's seamless. You're thinking, you're moving around, you're not flicking out your mobile phone and looking for an answer. Okay, but to your point, and I will just add.
Yeah, please.
Water will find its way. It's as simple as that.
Good
so
point.
Devices, mobile devices, tomorrow's day after, day after, people will find that a mobile phone is the right device for them. It will happen. Nothing is going to stop it. Water will find its way.
You have a question for investors?
No. I have just counterpoint. I was part of ST Microelectronics.
I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Just one.
No.
One
Can we have this conversation right after this? I'm sorry, because we're going to run out of time, and this place has to be
Yeah,
vacated.
just 30 seconds.
5
The
seconds.
counterpoint is devices has to be there. Otherwise, Samsungs and Xiaomi's will take your money. So India must develop its own devices.
Fair enough. Are there any questions for investors?
Typically, to attract a strong team, well-skilled team, you need a lot of money, and then until the investors come on board, see, because all the skilled people are in well-paying jobs, and they're not willing to.
Actually, money is the worst thing to be attracting the talent there, because then somebody else can always pay a little more and take that talent away. Please go tell them to go join whatever the biggest funded company is, because that's the wrong person. Usually people skip ship. Good people skip ship because you have sold an idea, sold a vision of how their skills can be used to do a much larger thing than what they're doing today. And
I've had entrepreneurs come up to me and say, as soon as the funding is done, I'm going to quit my job. I'm like, dude, no way.
Absolutely.
You're not getting funded.
Absolutely. That's like the worst answer possible.
So if you cannot convince a person, your friend, to come and join your vision, your own friend, how are you going to convince the investors? How are you going to convince your customers? No way.
So
a lot of my friends,
IC committee
a
member
lot of my
says
friends
that,
have told me that once you get funding, you please let us know. We will be the first ones to join.
Wrong people. So our advisor says that, the word CEO, this is the wrong word, right? The E is wrong. It has to be Chief Evangelist Officer, right? You are evangelizing to everybody, including you employees and the best employees, to get on board. And it's not about...
I'm going to tell you a story. I have to stand up for this. Imagine I'm standing on a cliff 200 feet above the ground, and there's a river flowing. Somewhere in that river, there's a deep water. At the bottom of that deep water, there are pots of gold kept. The deeper you go, the bigger the pot of gold, right? Now, there are two people standing on this cliff. One of them decides that I'm going to climb down, go and find that place and go inside. The other guy says, no way. The deeper you go, the bigger the pot of gold, I'm going to jump. When he jumps, halfway through, he realizes that the place where he thought the gold was, it wasn't there, removes his shirt, maneuvers it, goes and dips into the place where he thinks the money is, and 9 out of 10, he dies. 9 out of 10 times he dies. That's an entrepreneur. Think about it.
No wonder nobody wants to sign up for a
I'm going to go
startup.
back to something that Amitabh said. Bharat is very large, and the problems and businesses to be built for Bharat are equally large. My question as investor is, where are the entrepreneurs who are dreaming big enough to actually solve those problems and actually create those businesses? right? Where are the entrepreneurs? Why is the entrepreneurs restricting themselves to, all these complaints and issues? It's an absolute opportunity gold mine that we are sitting on. Why are we talking about, oh, the guy can't pay, oh, there's nobody's coming to join? I mean, there is a lack of the entrepreneur here to actually, with a larger vision, to solve these problems that exist. It's a massive, massive market. If you can crack it, I don't think it'll compare to anything that we have seen so far.
So the one thing we look for is conviction. All the people that will work with you should have the same conviction. I have non-profit founders who have not raised a single penny, and they have 5 people standing behind them because they believe in the same vision. People are saying, I will not take salary for the next 6 months. I will take salary when you raise money. If you're able to do that in non-profit sector where everybody is looking down upon you and saying, hey, what's wrong with you that you're, after all this education, you're doing non-profit? If you can do there, you can do anywhere else.
I mean, one of the biggest things that we face is, people will come and say, oh, please, I want to raise money, give me $1 million. Okay. So in 4 years, how big is your business going to be? About $1 million, right? Like, so you're at some point, you're like, okay, what are you talking about? And it's not that, okay, look, it'll be $1 million because I have to invest to build X, and, down the line, I expect this to be, in 10 years also it'll be like $3 million, right? So it doesn't make sense, right? It makes sense to you as an entrepreneur, if someone was to give you the cash for free and say, okay, fine, I'm running a small business here. But you really need people here to be thinking big, right? There are 700 million people in this category, right? And all 700 million people of them are, will happily jump on real solutions that are being offered here. So we need people to dream here to make that actually happen.
How many of you came here hoping to hear something else and you heard something else? Please, what did you come to hear? Why don't you ask any question? Except for film, I'm not very good at films, but I'll still try and, yeah. Yes.
So suppose you are being invested to the equity mode. Means what is your idea that how you should be exited actually? Means from an entrepreneur point of view, I want to understand that.
I mean, very simple. We need a multiple back on our money, right?
Okay.
So how that exit happens is, there are different mechanisms in the market as to how that will happen. Such as people may go ahead to raise much, much larger amounts of capital, which could provide the exit. You could merge with another business, sort of become a business vertical or something, and there is an exit sort of as to how that happens. I think very rarely it is cash that is generated out of the business, unless it's a different type of business here. It's more like a mezz type kind of business, right? Those are typically sort of the roots of how this kind of happens. Yeah, look, so I mean, I think as an entrepreneur, there are lots of problems with the market, right? In terms of your access to funding, your access, I mean, for us as an investor, access to exits, all of those kind of things, right? And so an IPO is just such a long journey over here that when someone puts an IPO, I mean, nice, but it's, beyond our horizon in many ways is the problem.
So I'll take an example to just illustrate. An entrepreneur came to us. This was a very profitable business, very innovative idea, no doubt about it. The guy was first in, to make that move, and he had thought through the entire ecosystem, what needed to be done and how he's going to grow. He was raising 3 crores, was asking for 27 crore as the pre-money, which meant that he was asking for 10% equity. 27 plus 3 is 30 crores, right? So this person was asking for 3 crores so he was ready to give, he was offering 10%. I said, great, because you're a post-revenue company, you're already making money, and your multiples are kind of, there's a little bit of a stretch, but I think it's okay. I said, I thought about it, and every time I meet an entrepreneur, I ask myself one question: is this person capable of raising the next round? Today, do I feel that this person is capable of raising the next round? Okay. So I asked this question and I thought about it at home. I said, where is the exit going to come from? If I'm putting in 3 crores, so I'm hoping to get 30 crores in 5 years. If I get very lucky, I want to get 30 crores. Now 10% is 3 crores. So 10% of what number is 30 crores? 300 crores. Okay. assuming that I don't because you're not going to reach 300 crores only on 3 crores. You'll be raising more money, right? If you're going to raise more money, my percentage holding will come down from 10% to 5%. Yeah. So 5%. So 5% of what number is 30 crores? 600 crores. Then I said, okay, who's going to buy this? He says, sir, make my trip, book my show, whatever. Some names he gave. I said, let's look. Well, not make my trip, but I'm just saying that he gave me a few names. I said, let me look at the books of this company to see whether they have cash. Whether they have cash. I said, okay, maybe they don't have cash. Let me see how much will it take for them to build this entity, what you have built, versus buy it. So should they build? So should they buy a 300 crore company, or should they spend 30 crores and build it? So there are considerations to answer your question based on which we look at investing. That was your original question, right?
Sorry, I think we can take one last question. There's a person in between. Sure.
Probably this is a little different question. As an young investor, what are the different avenues or what are the different forums where one can go out and look out for companies and do research and do things? I mean, like for small-time investor, how can we be a part of the Bharat story? Basically,
Are you an investor?
I mean, aspiring to be one.
He's got the best.
Why don't you?
Well, you have the solution. I don't have the solution. You can't be. I can't do anything with a small-time investor. But
I mean, look, I think, yeah, I mean, you can, there are so many angel networks. There's Malabar Angels. Where is PKG? Okay, so there's Malabar Angels, there's Chennai Angels, there's Indian Angel Network. There's many angel groups. You can form your own group. Okay, and you just 5 or 6 of you. The question is how, just like you are looking to invest monies in the best companies, the wannabe best companies are also looking for good investors. They want investors to add value apart from money. It's not just about money. I mean, are you going to help me, build an organization, get me customers, help me raise the next round of money? So there are considerations. So people need to find you. We at Indian Angel Network receive 12,000 applications per year. Yeah. First level, within 5 minutes of seeing something, about 10,000 of them are wiped out. Okay.
so it's not so easy to be an investor.
Okay.
The statistics are similar.
So out of the 2,000, 300 come to our internal pitch team. Small team of people who are pitching that one. Out of the 300, we shortlist 300, which then get presented to our investors, and only 30 companies get invested in. So 12,000 to 30. Now there's a big pipeline. Why? Because just like their fund, Indian Angel Network, people are seeking us out. Why? Because we are out there in the public. So everybody knows who to Ankur Capital to go to for XYZ. So they also know where to come to Indian Angel Network. So you need to create a brand for yourself by which people get attracted to you.
I think as an individual investor, it makes sense to join these networks, right? Because then they facilitate you looking at opportunities. So whatever range of whichever fees or whatever they are, but at the end of the day, it just sounds silly, but we run a business as an investor, right? And there is a cost of entrepreneur acquisition, if you may call it that, right? Which is not cheap at all, right? So it makes sense that you leverage a larger pool of people to reduce the cost of that customer acquisition, and there are many other factors as well. But so I think there is no, unless it's your best friend and you're getting to be a business partner, that's a different situation. But if you're looking to invest, then I think being part of these networks and bringing down that cost is.
Any regulatory constraints or things like that to be part of the angel network? Then no.
Just fee.
Checkbook.
Checkbook.
There is some minimum KYC, but that's okay.
Yeah, so there are tons of meetup events that keep happening where a lot of startups go and pitch their ideas. I would probably start with that before I go give money to him. If depending on how big your check is, I would probably look at those as an area.
But just think about the fact, right, that your check, right, and I'm not sure what size checks you want to write, but if they're massive checks, no problem. Just put the number out there. Everybody will come to you. That's not an issue. But if you're like most other angel investors and you're going to put a small check, right? Putting the check is the simplest of issues here. Let me be frank, right? Post that, you need to be able to support this company, and forget support of non-monetary support, right? Other money needs to come in to scale this company, right? So unless you're writing a $50 million check or a $20 million check, which you think will get this company all the way up to completely being self-sustaining, etc. here, you need the network in order to be able to actually help pull that capital in. When you go it alone, it's just much a harder journey, right? So just think about what happens post you putting the check in.
Yeah, please. There is one question at the back, but yeah.
Portfolio.
Because 9 out of 10 companies are going to fail.
The one is going to make money has to compensate.
You have a question there, man?
You can just stand up and speak.
Hi everyone. So, so basically, my question was that once you put in money as an angel investor and you want to exit at Series A, how easy it is to do that once a VC comes into the picture?
You both answer this. Yeah, please go.
You have the experience, Amitabh, so I think you should talk about it.
Look,
I can tell
you
how
at
we
the
think
end of the
about
day, you have, okay, after putting in the money, if value has been added, yeah, and the next investor, just like I as an angel investor look for the ability of the founder or my ability to get him the next round of funding, the next round of funding guy is also thinking of the PE guy, right? So, if you have an angel, maybe you have a seed investor, mama, kaka, chacha, somebody who gives you money. Then you have an angel investor group, then you have a VC, then you have a PE, then you have you go for a big bang IPO, right? So at every stage you're looking to exit. It's possible that I may get an exit as an angel investor. I'm no longer an angel investor, I'm a VC now. But I'm saying that it's possible, and I have got a fantastic exit for a company that I cannot name, because after I got the exit, the company went bust. Okay. So, but I did get an exit. But it's not always very true. The question is, the next round investor, if they think that they want to clean up the cap table and remove all this chutput guys who put in 5 lakh, 10 lakh, 20 lakh, just get them out of the table, then you might get an exit. Or they might say, look, unless you are reinvesting pro rata, I'm not putting in the money. So both can be possible. You add anything from your experience?
So I just think that as a funder that comes in, you want that money, most of your money, to go towards growth, basically, right? You are typically not coming here unless it's sort of a strategic acquisition. You don't want all these random people around here to make a noise, right? So if you're bringing in $10 million and somebody wants an exit for 8 million, you're not going to do that, right? Because you're relying on making money on that company growing. So I think it depends on the situation and the type of investor who comes in. I mean, typically 10% odd of the thing is what liquidity is typically looked at. I think to get a much higher number is tough at most stages. Yeah.
Does that answer your question, Anne? Okay. Any other questions?
I think we have
I have one question.
Yeah, we're out of time.
The last.
Just one last question.
So while the entrepreneurs pitch to the investors, people from IIM, IIT, do they have an edge compared to the other people?
Good question.
Or it's just about the person, talent, and what he does?
So the one thing that we look for is capability, and capability to me is not degree. Capability is not degree. It's
Right.
not equivalent to degree. Capability is, have you shown past success?
Yeah.
Have you shown success in your past life, which makes me believe that you will invest enough time to understand the problem, invest enough time to experiment, invest enough time to stay committed to that problem. That is the first thing that I look for.
So I'm not going to say the right thing, okay?
Yes or no?
There is usually a bias. I'm not talking about myself. I'm thinking in general there is a bias. But at the end of the day, a fund has an investment committee. Okay? That investment committee will take the call on whether the feeling of the of the partner who's recommending the deal to the investment committee is in line. So there may be a bias in saying, okay, the guy seems to be from a big pedigree. Now, why have IITs and IIM got this reputation? Let's just address this. They've had successive generations of students, yeah, who have helped, who got help from their seniors. You, as a founder, you need to be investor savvy. Yeah, you need to be investor savvy. Some of the language, some of the lingo, you don't talk about this, talk about this. You're not putting together your idea. So there is usually a bias. I'm not suggesting that I am one of those. Okay, I'm just saying that in general there's a bias. But remember, there's a lots of checks and balances on the way to ultimately delivering the check. Because before you deliver the check, there is a financial due diligence on the company. There's a legal due diligence. There are several steps which go all the way till the money is invested. So it's very possible that at the end, that may not be. And I don't think that Dhirubhai Ambani graduated from IIT.
So I would like to say that we don't have this IIT IIM bias. I would go with Priya, and I think there are many attributes to an entrepreneur which are way more important than I've had experiences with entrepreneurs with the best of degrees from the globe, and they're not entrepreneurs, right? They don't have that. Just because you went to a particular school doesn't necessarily give you the other attributes that come with it. So at Ankur, I think there's a weighing of the attributes, and I would say the education is the least of it.
Thank you.